because I think that they might make really good extra credit questions. Don't you think, Fallon? Really good. All right. Are we re-recording again? Okay. So, onwards and upwards. So we have been talking for a couple units now about mechanisms of the cell and how to get energy and how energy is moved around. And in lab, we actually started talking about the breaking down and retrieval a little bit of sugar into ATP, right? What we called cell respiration light. So we finally gotten to the part where we are going to do cell respiration full. So what we're going to find is we're really going to take a lot of these pieces that we've been working on, particularly in the last 2 units, and utilize them in much fuller, broader detail. And then in particular, right, what we started in lab, we did the first 3 steps of cell respiration, right? How do we take, in particular, a sugar molecule, start to break those bonds, and get energy out of it? But remember when we were doing this in lab, we didn't really get a whole lot of energy out of that, right? Maybe 3 or 4 ATP at best, which I would not say, for all of the work that we put into that, was a very useful process. And that's because we didn't end up finishing. So what we're going to find is here in lecture, we're going to add the last 2 steps of that process and realize, oh, okay, that's where all the ATP is. And that's why we go to all of this trouble, because now we're actually going to get that energy. Remember, ATP is the currency to make things happen. Okay, so let's start with our solid footing. Okay. What are the things we know from the previous units that are going to help us along our way? So remember, okay, everything we've sort of done up to this point has been talking about bringing energy into an ecosystem, bringing energy into an organism, okay, transferring energy, and transforming it. Okay, so we're just moving it around. Okay, so our goal in this unit is just going to be adding details to that concept. Okay, so we bring it in as the first law. Okay, and then remember that is an incomplete transfer. So we lose some of that energy as heat, okay, as water, and as carbon dioxide. And we're actually going to be able to see some of these processes in action, particularly the water and the carbon dioxide, while we're following these steps of cellular respiration. So we'll be able to see that chaos, right, that entropy, that second law of thermodynamics in play here in detail. Okay, so this is familiar ground. Okay, so then remember that our main starting point in our last unit, okay, as we think about it's all just moving stuff around, okay, that photosynthesis, the process of plants taking that sunlight and transforming that energy into their own tissues, is something that generates oxygen and what we call organic molecules. And organic is just one of those fancy words, just meaning carbon containing. Oh my goodness, did you fit? Kind of. Okay. So pretty much all of life on Earth, okay, that was at least alive at some point, is an organic molecule. Okay? You are an organic organism. Right? You have carbon in your body. So is your cat. So is a tree. Okay? These are all organic compounds. Okay, so if it was alive, it is organic. Okay, so different forms of organic compounds, these carbon-containing compounds, are used for cellular respiration. We saw this in lab, and remember we started with that sugar molecule, okay, and when we were doing this process in lab, we were counting the carbons, remember? Where did the carbons go? When did we break these carbon bonds? Okay, that was one of the big things we were doing. And that's because they were organic molecules, so they had these carbon bonds to be playing around with. Okay? So things that we knew, we just didn't know we knew, right? As we already knew this was all carbon-based stuff, we just didn't shove some terms on it necessarily. So good so far? Okay, so then we know that once the cells get or break these bonds, we're going to do some catabolic, exergonic processes, snap these carbon bonds, and get that energy out, right? And the energy wants to be in the form of ATP. As we know, ATP is the currency of the cell. We use that currency to do work. And remember we learned that work is just a fancy term, it's a physicsy term. It means do a thing. Okay, so things in cells can mean moving transport vesicles around. You got to pay ATP to move things around. And we talked about, for example, moving solutes against their concentration gradient. Okay, active transport costs ATP. You got to pay the toll bridge. ATP is the currency for that. All of these things are work. Okay, so it's like an umbrella term, meaning to do a thing. So anything a cell does, okay, we pay for. ATP is what we pay. We're going to make money, literally, to spend money, right? Okay, so these are all things we know. We've built up this knowledge. Now we're pulling it together. For this unit. Still feel pretty good? Okay, so here's our standing platform for this unit. Any questions so far? Okay, so remember, one thing that we know, okay, from previous units, right, we had to transfer energy around. Okay? We know this from our tour of the cell, from our amino acids or biomolecule lecture. One way or another, okay, things need to be taken into cells, right? I don't have everything I need inside myself. I need to bring things in to subsist, to live. So I require energy, I require products from outside sources. Okay, so in this case, we're talking about energy. Okay, so if I'm the giraffe from our front page, okay, I get that energy from eating the acacia tree, that plant. I'm going to transfer and transform the energy from that plant. Okay. Perhaps I'm an animal that eats another animal, right? The lion eats the zebra. And same goes for plants, remember. Okay? If I'm a tree, I'm getting some of my energy from the sun. Okay? The sun is still an outside source. I'm not doing it all myself. one more thing, and this is new. Okay? Every unit, there's always one word that's been hijacked. Respiration is the word in this unit. Okay? We generally think of the word colloquially. Respiration means to breathe. Okay? It doesn't. Okay? So when I'm breathing, that term is actually ventilation. And I think a lot of us are probably getting accustomed to that term thanks to all these doctors and nurses that have popped up on social media, better or worse, right? Thanks to the current climate that's on. Okay, so when you are breathing, whether it's on your own or someone's doing it for you, okay, you are ventilating the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your body. Okay? What we're going to be talking about today, okay, the breaking down of, well, today and further on, okay, at the cellular level, the breaking down of sugar for ATP, that's called respiration. Now, these two processes are linked. And we're going to find that cell respiration, okay, uses oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide, okay, which is received and gotten rid of by using ventilation, right? So they're linked processes, but they are separate processes. So we want to make sure that we practice our terms correctly. So I, as an organism, ventilate. My cells respire. So we'll use the word respiration probably 100 times in the next 2 weeks. I'll maybe use the word ventilation once or twice. We only care about oxygen and carbon dioxide actually coming in once or twice. That makes sense? I feel okay? Let's hit up our roadmap. Maybe. Here we go. The first thing we'll end up talking about on Wednesday is what is the overall way that we're getting energy out of glucose. Okay, so we'll do a little bit of an overview. And then as you see, we'll go through the 5 steps that this actually occurs. So remember in lab we only did 3, right? We did cell respiration light. So we'll go through some more detail for those first 3 that you went through, and then we'll add the 2 last steps. You'll see it's really this 5th step, ATP synthase, where ATP is synthesized, okay, where the Big Bang happens. So you see I have my box out. Okay, so just like before, see what it is that we need to focus on. The first of which is what is the goal or what is happening. So just like before, you saw there was always something we started with that we were trying to break it down into. And that'll be the first thing we're paying attention to. Then the last bit, okay, are we making ATP? That's certainly our goal, so we want to pay attention to that. And if not, what did we make? Okay, which was a lot of things. It's going to feel really overwhelming at first. It's going to feel like we're making a massive list. You're going to find it's always the same, like 2 things. It's also ultimately, gracious, it was just a giant tally system. Okay. Lastly, we're just going to end up then very shortly looking at the difference between what's called aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Right? Respiration with and without oxygen. It's going to be very short because you're going to find that not a lot happens when oxygen isn't around. I don't know why I do that. All right, let's go ahead and stop here. We'll pick up fresh on Wednesday.